and welcome to the Research Works podcast, brought to you in association with Curtin University and the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dana Poole and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and together we will interview world-leading researchers in the area of child health to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
Welcome back to another episode of Research Works. We are really excited to have another wonderful topic and guest to introduce to you all today. On the show, we have Professor Sonya Girdler from Curtin University. Welcome, Sonya.
Good morning, Ash.
Welcome, welcome. It is actually so lovely to have you here, Sonya. We've discussed a lot of papers now over the past year, and you are like one of the main authors in many of these papers. It's finally, it's so wonderful to have you here finally in person. So thank you so much for carving out some time. I know you have a very, very busy schedule.
You're welcome.
Oh, we love it.
And for our listeners, a bit of background about Professor Sonya Girdler, who is from the School of Allied Health at Curtin University and is the director of the Curtin Autism Research Group and Director of Program 3 of the Living with Autism Cooperative Research Centre. Sonya oversees all research activity and programs within the Curtin Autism Research Group. She has extensive experience in the field of autism research and neurodevelopmental disorders more broadly. Her approach embraces the ICF with the development, evaluation and translation into practice of evidence-based interventions, particularly for social skills, strengths-based programs and mental health.
Yeah, it was actually really hard to pick out an article to discuss with you today because you have been so instrumental in so many papers and publications. So today we thought we'd actually just ground ourselves in a really interesting article that was recently published in European Child and Adolescent Psychiatry titled Contact, Social Skills Group Training for Australian Adolescents with Autism Spectrum Disorder, a randomised controlled trial. And I think we'll make many, many links here to broader areas that you're involved with too, and really draw on some real practicalities of evidence-based practice to support clinicians working with children or adolescents actually with autism.
Absolutely. But before we get into all of that, Sonya, we like to ask people a little icebreaker question before we get started. And I know that you have a particular fondness for travel when we are allowed to travel. Yes. Hopefully here in WA that will be soon. But the question that we have for you today is, where is your favourite seat on the plane?
Wow. Yeah, I did like to travel very, very much. My favourite seat on the plane is probably any plane headed towards Scandinavia. But, I take right up the back near the toilet on that plane at the moment. But, if I can, business class is always lovely. But, if that's not possible, which it really isn't, unless you get an upgrade because, you have a doctor title on your boarding pass, then I like the aisle seat because I think on long haul flights you need to get up and down and stretch, and I really like to move around. So I hate the window seat on a long haul flight.
Just getting stuck in there.
Climbing over people you don't know, and it's really not that fun. And I get claustrophobic if I'm stuck right in that corner. So that is my very least favourite seat. So,
I am with you on that one. I jagged an upgrade once, flying from the UK to, I think it was Dubai or Doha. Yeah.
Nice.
And that was the best 7 hours of my life.
Oh, no, it's amazing, isn't it? Nice champagne, nice fluffy donuts.
Yeah.
Nice stewardess.
Yeah.
Anyway, now I'm dreaming.
Yeah. And I watched Pretty Woman and I was like, I've made it. This is it.
It's a nice space.
It went very quickly. But I'm with you though. It has to be an aisle seat. So you can, preferably near the snack cart.
Yes,
where they leave the little,
that's a really good idea. Look, I've been on business class flight once or twice from an upgrade, and it was very amazing because there were so many buttons you can press.
Yeah.
You can go up and down, and you can have all different kinds of angles, and you have cutlery and
the little salt and pepper shakers.
Oh, they give you everything.
The French champagne.
Oh, it's phenomenal. So that hasn't happened since that one beautiful moment. So the seats I tend to get stuck in, I'm going to say stuck in, is the extra leg space one. So which always sounds really good for people, but I've got a tall husband who really likes the extra leg space, but I've got short legs. So it's not very comfortable for me. I have to
It's quite cold as well.
It's quite cold, and I have to grab a bag and put my feet on there. Otherwise, my feet just dangle. So, So for me, those they're nice, but it will be an aisle seat all the way. But at this point, anyway, just get me on a plane.
We'll take any seats.
I'll go. Good question, Ash. Makes us dream. All right, well, let's get into this particular paper because there's so much great meaty stuff to get into here. So a bit of a summary. In In this study, there were 90 verbal autistic students aged between 12 and 17 years who participated in this pragmatic 2-armed randomised controlled trial to evaluate the efficacy of 16 90-minute sessions of social skills group training known as KONTAKT in comparison to a manualised interactive group cooking program of equal dosage. The primary outcome was the adolescents' progress towards achieving their personally meaningful social goals as rated by them, not their parents. Secondary outcomes included changes in autistic traits, quality of life, facial emotion, recognition skills, social anxiety, and loneliness. These measures were taken at baseline, post-intervention, and 12-week follow-up. Now, the findings suggest that KONTAKT is efficacious in supporting autistic adolescents to achieve their personally meaningful social goals when compared to other pro-social group activities.
Thank you for that summary, Dana.
No worries.
And Sonya, we've talked to a few authors about autism spectrum disorder lately, but an area that we probably haven't touched on quite yet is the area of social skills. So I was wondering if you could start by giving us a bit of an overview of some of the challenges that autistic children and adolescents might experience when it comes to social skills.
Yeah, I think social skills are in part at the core of an autism diagnosis. I mean, autism is a diagnosis which reflects a challenge with social communication and an impairment in communication. So I think we all learn social skills as we grow up, and particularly during those teenage years. And I think it's something that we, typically developing individuals might take for granted. Like we kind of acquire them as we're hanging out in the schoolyard and spending time with our friends. And we get pretty solid feedback on whether our social skills are working or not. But I think a lot of the communication impairments associated with autism make it challenging for autistic children to interact with their peers, so that there may in fact be some avoidance of social situation for autistic children. But also a lot of autistic individuals find it really hard to recognise emotions. So they find it really hard to interpret those social skills, social cues that we might take for granted, like reading emotional expressions, particularly complex emotions. You know, we express things subtly, and a lot of what we say is actually not said. So social communication is incredibly complex, and we kind of build up those skills, through our primary years and early teenage years by practicing and, interacting with others. But when you find it difficult to understand what someone else is thinking and then how that might be portrayed in their emotion expressions, it becomes very confusing and overwhelming. And I think a lot of autistic children and teenagers actually get quite overwhelmed by trying to understand their social world. So therefore they might withdraw, or they might make mistakes, and they might get negative feedback from their peers on that front. So I think there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Children and teenagers.
Yeah. And social skills group training is one of the most widely used group approaches to try and start to, improve social functioning for autistic children and adolescents. What does that actually look like?
Yeah, so it's been around a long time. It's probably got about a 20-year history now. So it kind of looks like, small groups of autistic children and adolescents working together to, talk about social situations and try and build their skills. I think there are different ways of doing that. There's, in some social skills training interventions, there's a more scripting approach where children and adolescents might use scripts for social situations that they can kind of roll out when they need it. Now, KONTAKT, the social skills training program that we've developed, doesn't take that approach. It takes more a problem-solving, naturalistic group approach to actually sharing and role-playing, and tries to do more naturalistic type activities and, focusing on individuals' personal social goals. But, there are many different approaches to this area. I think it's actually evolving in its sophistication in terms of what are the active ingredients of these programs, what works, what doesn't. And I think you have to be careful of actually, not causing anxiety and not causing, adverse events with some of these interventions, because, you may in fact be increasing stress by, challenging them and developing their social skills. So, yeah.
And that's a really interesting one to sort of build on, I guess, in terms of the adverse events. It's not always about just the effectiveness of an intervention, whether you're achieving someone's goals or, being able to look at that side of things. We need to be thinking about adverse events. You've touched on it a bit there. Can we just explore that a little bit more? What kind of adverse events are we really talking about when we're thinking about these kinds of interventions?
Yeah, I think it's something we've not really looked at really closely in, interventions in healthcare. And we've kind of, said, of course, this is good, it's great, because we all, know exactly what we're doing. Possibly we've got room for improvement on that front. So, when we talk about adverse events and social skills training, we are talking about things about potentially increasing social anxiety.
Sure.
Because if you're teaching skills and your aim is to improve functioning, maybe by bringing someone's attention and awareness to that, social challenges they may have, you may be increasing their anxiety, and that may result in social withdrawal or negative social outcomes.
Sure.
Yeah. I think with any intervention, there's a cost benefit question. So if you're going to your social skills group once a week, maybe you're not going to basketball, maybe you don't have as much time for leisure activities, some of the other things you might be doing, and I think also, things like missing school, those kind of things.
Sure.
So for a lot of these children, they are spending a lot of time in therapy and in groups. So what's the cost benefit of them withdrawing from their everyday activities, those sorts of things? So I think it comes down to those things like precision medicine as well. What works for a particular individual based on their profile, and being a bit more sophisticated in terms of what we are offering to our client base.
Yeah.
So actually understanding that a particular type of intervention might work for a particular profile of child, but it may not work for a child who has, autism and really significant social anxiety. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but we just don't understand those questions enough yet. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in actually tailoring and being more precise in what we encourage autistic children and teenagers to engage in.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And like you say, part of this particular social skills group training program is that application of what they're learning in a more natural environment and natural context. And for a lot of these children and adolescents, that is anxiety inducing, or, it's quite a stressful thing to experience. So having that in the forefront of your mind when you're guiding them through programs like this, I think is so important as clinicians to reflect on before you start engaging in this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think checking in with them and seeing where they're at, having many touch points so you can monitor how they're going before, it becomes, a really negative situation or a really negative outcome. Yeah. Because, it's the last thing anyone wants.
Of course, of course. So, Sonya, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about Contact specifically, because it's one of, as you said, a suite of social skills group training program. So what is Contact and how does it differ from some of the other programs out there?
Yeah, so it kind of comes back to my, love of all things Scandinavian, actually. So Contact actually began in Germany, nearly 2 decades ago. My amazing colleague, Professor Sven Bolte, who is now in Stockholm, actually originally developed the Contact social skills training program in Germany, in German, and did a pilot study in Germany, which suggested that this was a really effective approach for autistic children and teenagers there. And then Sven moved to Stockholm in 2010 and set up the Karolinska Institute for Neurodevelopmental Disorders, affectionately known as KIND, which is a lovely acronym for a research centre in autism. So he worked on Contact there for many years. They actually did the largest randomised control trial on social skills training interventions in the world in Stockholm with children and autistic teenagers. I think the sample is, over 300. So
oh my goodness.
A really huge study. Yeah. And what that study showed in Sweden with autistic children and teenagers was that the longer version of Contact, so the 24-week version of Contact, was nearly twice as effective as the 12-week version of Contact, and that Contact was particularly efficacious for teenagers, it seemed, and probably girls. So there was some findings based on that Swedish work. Now Australians don't speak Swedish, but so Sven was incredibly generous and said that if you'd like, Sonya, you can translate Contact to English, and you can do some evaluation work in Australia and, ultimately translate Kontact into service delivery in Australia. So I tried to teach myself Swedish, so jag pratar svenska lite. But me and Google Translate have bonded for many hours over the last 5 years.
Wow.
And so we translated the Kontact manuals from Swedish to English, many iterations. And then we were able to do this amazing randomized control trial. In fact, we were halfway through our second RCT because we were lucky enough to receive amazing funding from the Stan Perrin Charitable Foundation. So we're incredibly grateful for that support because none of these beautiful studies would have been possible without that funding. So we did a feasibility study on the initial translation. We adapted the intervention. We decided that a 16-week version would really fit the Australian school term context because we run on 10-week terms here. So we run 8 sessions in one term and then 8 sessions in the other term. So we dealt with a 16-week intervention, and then we ran this amazing randomised control trial for nearly 2 years in partnership with the Autism Association of Western Australia. So that was kind of what we've done, and the manuals will actually be published in the next month or so. So it'll be available sort of in English to Australia and potentially internationally as well. So
that's so exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting.
So amazing.
So excited to see the manuals. They look lovely with illustrations.
So much work goes into it.
Breaking news on the podcast.
Yeah,
so great.
Contact manuals here soon.
Yeah.
But, the work of so many people over so many years, Sven, like I said, began this work, probably 15 to 20 years ago. So it's been a very long journey.
Yeah.
So.
And what are some of the key ingredients of the sessions within Kontact? Like what does it look like kind of on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so Kontact is a framework, and the sessions very much follow an agenda. So there's an opening round, there's homework, there's games, there's role play, there's discussion around social skills and people's experience. Then there's some looking at emotions and some skill building around emotion recognition as well.
Wow.
So it's really designed to build the participants' toolbox, give them a really good toolkit of social skills and social problem solving ability and focus on some more targeted social skills. Over 16 weeks, that's a really nice time to work with someone and actually focus on a particular area they may be experiencing challenges with. And there's homework attached as well. So, we encourage the participants to do their homework. There are varying levels of engagement with that. But, doing the homework is one of the strongest factors in relation to having good outcomes with the program, as you expect.
So the really interesting thing is that in this study, you had an active control group, which is the super chef group. Can you just talk through a little bit about how different that is to Kontact?
Yeah, so when we did a systematic literature review before we started the Kontact study, what we realised is that most social skills programs in autism are actually compared to usual care.
Yeah.
And I guess something a lot of clinicians know is that usual care is, nothing at all or just a tiny bit, what is usual care. So you end up comparing the efficacy of these really intensive high dosage interventions to absolutely probably nothing in most cases. And I think 16 hours of therapy has got to be better than nothing or we should all pack up and go home. So I think we've not really controlled for the effect of explicit social skills training, which is overtly teaching social skills compared to implicit social skills training, which is giving people a supportive social context where they meet peers, they get to share experiences with other autistic children and teenagers and then understand which is more effective in actually building social skills. Because some of our other work has been around computer coding clubs for autistic teenagers. We run that club through Curtin and we have over 300 autistic teenagers in those coding clubs, and we've done some evaluation work on that as well. But what we've seen in those programs is that actually putting autistic kids together to focus on a shared task and a shared interest is really powerful in terms of building their self-confidence and their social skills. So this randomised control trial was really special in that it kind of allowed us to compare that really supportive social context with that explicit social skills training and to see what the added effect was of that explicit social skills training and improving outcomes.
And one of the other things I really loved about this paper is that you were looking at GAS but for social skills. So the participants were setting goals around social skill development, and I think that's just so wonderful. Could you talk us through how GAS can be written for social skills? Maybe a little example?
Yeah, so I have a wonderful PhD student, Bahari Apashanajad, who's turned this into an amazing piece of work, actually. So we hope to actually publish the social skills goal system that she's used. With autistic children and teenagers, they have a lot of problems with, more abstract thinking and that kind of thing. So she developed visual aids and visual prompts to actually help them establish their social goals and what they wanted to focus on. And then she actually worked in a really structured interview way with each teenager to actually operationalize their goals into actual GAS goals. So, -2 in GAS is kind of where they are now.
Yeah.
-1 is less than expected progress. And then, 0 is expected progress, and +1 and +2 is above expected progress. So the teenagers were actually actively involved in setting those goals. Maybe it was around making a phone call to a friend and having a social conversation on the phone and, asking 1, 2, 3 questions and engaging. That's a really quite detailed social goals.
Yeah.
And the teenagers actually really helped to operationalize that. So it was incredibly personally meaningful. That the paper actually shows some of the detailed sort of unpacking of those personal social goals.
Yes.
So they're really tailored to the individual. Because the other thing we found when we looked at the literature is most of outcome measures for autistic teenagers have been measured by parent proxy report.
Yeah.
And, I've had 2 teenagers myself. I really don't know what they're up to on a daily basis. So I think it's important to get parents' perspective and get their insights. But I think it's also really important to talk to the adolescents themselves.
Yeah.
So that's what I really liked about this measurement framework.
No, I agree. And there is, as you say, in the paper, and we'd encourage everyone to go and read this paper, there's a beautiful table in there that actually steps out some of those goals within the GAS framework for people to have a look
really
at.
Good.
Yeah. One of the other things that was really fantastic about this paper is that of your 90 participants, you ended up with 270 individual, personally meaningful social goals. And we're talking about, across domains like improving communication, social engagement, managing conflict and social skills. And there's another really great table on the frequency of those goals, which I think makes this paper really clinically relevant for clinicians working with autistic adolescents and children. So what are some of the key ingredients that contribute to actually addressing those goals, Sonya?
So in the Contact program, I think, as I mentioned before, Contact focuses on problem solving and role play. And while each of the weeks have a theme, halfway through Contact, it transitions to peer-led. So the participants actually get the opportunity to lead the session themselves and to determine the topic.
Yeah.
And so I think, when you're allowing the teenagers to take some leadership and some ownership for what they're focusing on, they very much direct the content of the program to focus on their personal goals. So there is almost like individual group tailoring in the Contact program. So it provides a structure and a framework and activities and a guide, but each participant gets to focus a session on what they want to talk about, what they would like to share with the group. So Contact's quite flexible. It's manualised, and there's a lot of supports and resources and agendas in there to help therapists in running the program. But it also has this level of flexibility, which allows the therapist and the participants to kind of tailor it to the goals of the participants. Because, like you said, 270 individual social goals, and then they're all broken down into categories. I think the actual structure of Contact focuses on that area of social skills building, but it is flexible enough to accommodate for the differences of each individual group. Because working in autism, I think one thing you understand is if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Right.
And so that flexibility and tailoring in programs in autism is incredibly important.
And I love that, the reason why we're like talking about outcome measures and goals is because we do need something to guide us in terms of, what it is that we're doing and how can we measure change. And to measure change, you still need an outcome measure that's actually sensitive to that. There's nothing more frustrating than doing a study. You get to the end, you're like, I know we've seen the change, but it's not been reflected. And it's that individual nature. And, I don't know how many times I've heard about the challenges in writing a goal that's around social skills and communication. But your paper just shows that you can do it. It requires some time to be able to do so, but it's worth doing.
Absolutely.
And it's possible to do as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also in doing a randomized control trial, I have a mantra in life: never, ever, ever do a randomized control trial without a feasibility study first.
Yes.
Because you've got so much to iron out in an RCT. Once you're invested and you're on your way, you can't change anything.
That's right.
And I think in those feasibility studies, you have, you develop a real understanding of, is your measurement framework right? Is it working?
Absolutely.
Is it going to be appropriate? Is the intervention appropriate? What works, what doesn't?
Yeah.
So I think those feasibility studies are so important. If you do one and it doesn't work, then do another feasibility study. There's no shame in doing two.
That's right.
Before you invest, right in a very expensive randomized control trial.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Absolutely true. Yeah. So I thought we should go into some of the results now, because I think I want to talk about dosage and all those things as well, but I think maybe we can talk about what we found in the results to start off with, and I think that can give us a good platform to talk more about that. So Sonya, in terms of the results now, we know that both groups made improvements, but there were some differences for long-term and sustained improvements. So can you just go through that and sort of summarize what it is that you had found in your study?
Yeah, so I guess the answer to the question is explicit social skills training better than implicit social skills experiences? And the answer is actually yes, it is, in terms of participants being able to achieve their personally meaningful social goals. But actually, those implicit opportunities are pretty good as well, because what we found at post-test on the primary outcome measure, which was those GAS personally meaningful social goals, was at post-test there was not a significant difference between groups, but at 12-week follow-up there was. So, it suggests that both those experiences have a positive impact on autistic teenagers, but actually the explicit teaching and explicitly building their toolkit for social skills, actually after the intervention stops and after that ceases, they go on to develop and consolidate those social skills in the longer term. I think, our follow-up was 12 weeks post-intervention. It'd be really super interesting to follow up, further on down the track and see what happens. And, some of that work's going on in Sweden. But I think, those explicit skills that you learn through that teaching process don't go away, whereas that once the group stops for like a cooking group and that social situation removes, you don't have a very long carryover effect in terms of building social skills. And I think as therapists, that's the holy grail that we're after, is those sustained outcomes.
That's
and
right.
Of course.
if you deliver an intensive intervention, how long does that last for? Because delivering these interventions can be quite expensive and a big commitment, and you want to see a longer term impact in terms of the changes they're generating. So that's what we saw in terms of social skills. And then we saw a reduction in contact participants in their social anxiety. So in their anxiety related to social situations, which was really good, because it goes back to my point about adverse events. You want to be careful you're not actually increasing social anxiety by bringing their attention to some of their challenges. But in fact, contact had the opposite effect. It actually reduced their social anxiety. So that was really important to see, I think.
And do you think that relates to the fact that they were working on goals that were meaningful to them? So, their particular social anxieties or the social context that they're most likely to find themselves in?
Yeah, I think so. That's why, I really like the framework of contact. It was initially when I saw it in Swedish and I could understand what it was and what was going on, and, started feeding things through Google Translate. What I realized was it was incredibly, within that framework, incredibly individualized and worked on individual social goals, and that allowed that individual tailoring and that more precision medicine approach to these social skills training, which I think is why contact is effective. I think that's what makes contact so great. It's why I'm really committed to this line of research. and in autism, I think makes it so aligned to the needs of, individual autistic individuals who have many different profiles. So.
It's that individual nature that I feel like is always the barrier when you are reading a research article and you want to see how you can translate that into the practice for the child that you're seeing. It's pretty much what you described at the beginning, that real precision medicine is understand the personality traits. And I love that in this paper you have provided a great platform to be able to, for me as a researcher, but for me as a clinician, to problem solve my way through in terms of what it is that I can do to support children that I work with. But I want to go to the impact of dosage. And I did say I wanted to come back to that because it's not just about the number of hours, it's also the content of what it is, are the key ingredients of getting those sustained long-term impacts. Because ultimately, with intensive therapy, they can look really good within that time frame, fabulous, but they do have to apply that outside of it because it's kind of the whole point.
Right.
And so can you talk us through a little bit about because I know there's the 12-week, the 16-week, 24-week variants and what that looks like. So as a clinician working in the community, how could they structure their therapy to provide enough dosage, I suppose, with this in mind?
Yeah, that's a really, really complex question.
I know.
I mean, like I said, the work in Sweden, the 24-week was nearly twice as effective as the 12-week intervention. So it does show you that, more is better. I mean, the question is, if you're able to do this for a whole year, how effective would that be? I suspect it'd be super effective. That question of dosage and what you can deliver and what, you can afford is also, what families can pay for in the NDIA is an incredibly complex question. You need enough to make it effective and have sustained results, but you also don't want to be delivering, unnecessary therapy. So, I think what we're understanding that social skills take time to develop. You can't just give a crash course and expect long-term change. But what is that time point? And I think, it's somewhere between 16 and 24 weeks. I think if we went on longer than the 16-week program and went up to the 24, that we would have seen stronger effects in the contact group. Maybe if I did the randomized control trial again, we might try that. But I was very also concerned about the feasibility of this program because if you make it 24 weeks, you might actually, it may not be as accessible because it becomes very expensive in terms of therapists' time and also the commitment from families and teenagers as well. So it's incredibly complex question, dosage. And I think one we need to understand a lot more in behavioural interventions, like contact and in exercise and in everything that we do in clinicians.
Absolutely.
And I think with the context of NDIA, you are planning for that year ahead and you're trying to think of what that child might need in the supports that they might need for that area as well. So you are sort of planning ahead for that. And I think sometimes knowing that you have, say, contact where it's 8 weeks in this term and 8 weeks another, you can plan for that almost, and that can help from a family feasibility perspective. And I think there's just lots of things like that in terms of feasibility for the family and what's actually possible within the family context.
And balancing it out with all their other commitments.
That's right, that after-school commitment of getting kids to groups after school, allowing time for children to pursue their interests, play some sport, do other social clubs, that kind of thing. I guess that kind of speaks to, where my colleagues in Sweden have gone to contact. They've actually started developing a school program. So actually integrating contact into the school context. And that's some work I'd like to pursue here, is developing a social skills curriculum for schools that actually can sit alongside those other teaching areas that we have, at school, but also particularly for neurodiverse students to actually build their social skills in a naturalistic social context. I'm in school.
The ultimate
sort of generalization. So we're actually starting to think about doing that work down here and what that might look like, and designing a curriculum for social skills support in schools, because I think that the Swedes seem to always be leading the way. They do great work up there.
They do.
So I feel so privileged to actually be able to learn from their experience and bring that back here, because it actually shortcuts what we need to do by years,
Yeah.
which is an amazing gift when you're working in research.
For sure.
Very long timelines. So they're starting to do that work, and I hope maybe in the next few years we'll be able to start to do that work down here, working with the schools.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
And Sonya, in terms of implementing, what we can learn from the Contact program into practice, I think the fact that there were so many goals in the area of social skills, when we talked about the volume of that, speaks to the importance of providing support to autistic adolescents at this, quite fragile point in their lives.
Yeah.
I thought we could perhaps talk about some practicalities around how we can actually support autistic youth in our everyday practice. So, do you have any thoughts around, is there an ideal age that we should start with a program like this?
Yeah, so our youngest entry point for Contact is 8 years old, and I think that's kind of where it's at. I think before that, kids, are too small to understand that sort of thinking about thinking kind of ideas. That sort of cognition is evolving. So that's kind of where Contact starts.
Yeah,
I think the really sweet point is those teenage years. I think there's a lot going on for teenagers. They're going through puberty. They're growing up. Their peers are becoming so much more important. They're building their own social networks and their own identity. And I think supporting autistic adolescents through those teenage years is key in their outcomes as adults.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to do far more work in that space as therapists and service providers in supporting our autistic teenagers.
Yeah.
I think the other area I love to work in is that strengths-based work. So actually understanding the individual autistic teenager and then having a profile of their strengths and understanding how we can leverage that in interventions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of autistic teenagers are really good at coding or really good at maths or really good at art.
Yeah.
And then understanding how we can leverage that in terms of getting them involved in social clubs or motivating them to be engaged in, other therapies or using that to showcase their talents and build their confidence and giving them that opportunity to shine. I think that's a really important part of practice in this space.
Yes. And for clinicians who are interested in and passionate about supporting these children to upskill in the social side of things, what skills does a clinician or a therapist need to have, do you think, to be able to support them?
Yeah, I think as therapists, we can play a key role in setting up supportive environments. And there's an idea actually that we ladify some of our autistic teenagers in that I'm a middle-aged lady, and my teenagers tell me I don't know much about their social skills and what it takes to be a teenager, and I actually think they're right.
Yeah.
Actually,
it's changed quite a bit.
It's
hasn't
changed
it?
quite a bit.
Yes.
I think computers were invented when I was a teenager, so it's terrifying. So I think it's about us encouraging autistic teenagers to engage in social interactions with adults, but also providing supportive context and opportunities for them to engage with their peers.
Yeah.
And that might be through things like mentoring programs, creating clubs around shared interests, thinking about how we can set up supportive social environments for them to interact with their autistic and their non-autistic peers. So I think as a therapist, it's recognising what we can do, but recognising what we can't do as well. So, being a bit realistic about that.
Yeah. And are there, besides, you dropped a little breaking news around Contact being manualised and potentially available soon in English, which is really exciting. Are there any other places that clinicians can go to upskill in this area?
Yeah, so the social skills training part of the actual program is provided through Karolinska Institute, so online and virtually. That's the training that goes alongside the manuals. Wow. So that will be provided, because they are the international leading experts in the delivery. They've been doing it for over a decade. So that's a really good place to go and have a look. I think looking at the literature, reading systematic reviews, chance of being boring, and understanding where the practice is at, and keeping up with things like strengths-based approaches and talking to teenagers themselves and listening to them about what their challenges are and understanding, the teenagers that you're working with. I think that's really important. You can't overemphasize the importance of understanding the individual.
And what I love about all that, Sonya, is that, you truly do live it. So, we've got these, I know systematic reviews sound boring, but they're a lot of work. They're very valuable, very important.
Yes.
And they inform what we need to do. Then we carry out our studies, and then we need to outwork it because we've got people that we're working with.
Yeah.
And I know that you had a very special event last night where you actually really did showcase this and highlight this as well. Can you tell our listeners a bit about that? Because that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a very wonderful night last night. We launched our exhibition, Sense and Sensitivity. So we had two neurodiverse artists, Simon Phillips, who's a photographer and takes amazing photos, which, he uses his autistic perspective to actually attention to detail and long exposure photography to take these incredible photos. And then we worked with another autistic artist, Dawn Joy Leong in Singapore, who created soundscapes over Simon's photos.
Wow.
So sounds like footsteps and bells and street sounds. And so she created composed these amazing sort of soundscapes that sat over Simon's photos in a digital sense. So they came together as this beautiful story. So that exhibition's on the John Curtin Gallery at the moment, and it was just so amazing to see these two neurodiverse individuals collaborating together and just making magic in terms of bringing their talents together and producing a thing of great beauty that creates a community conversation around the talents and strengths of autistic individuals. So,
that strengths-based approach just outworked and lived, and it's amazing. It really, really is truly amazing.
Yeah. And I think that is a really nice note to finish on, Sonya. So I would like to know, given, everything you've learned from this work and obviously your whole body of work throughout your career, what your recommendation would be for future work in this area. And I know you're doing some of it already, so you might like to talk about some of that, or where to, kind of big blue sky thinking, where to from here.
Yeah, I think co-producing more interventions with autistic teenagers and adults. I think some of the homework activities we're doing now, we're co-producing with teenagers where we're looking at the content. I think the future of autism research is actually more that co-production as we learn to work with autistic individuals in actually designing and doing our research. So I think that this is a space where the co-production movement is starting to really, gain momentum, which is fantastic. And I think, engaging more of the individuals we work with actually in producing the research and in developing interventions. I think that's kind of the next sort of, great thing in this space. So that's kind of where I hope I'll see before my career ends.
That's exciting.
I love that.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, to really sum this all up now, we're going to go to our final segment, which is commonly known as the 60-second pitch to the common man, Ed. Now, Ed is our producer, and as you all know by now, he doesn't have a background in child health, but he listens in very intently in all of our conversations, and he often has quite a lot of insights into this as well. So we'll see how he goes. He doesn't look too nervous. He looks all right. So, Sonya, can I get you to summarise in about 60 seconds or so this area of research to someone who doesn't have a background in child health?
Right. Okay. So Contact is a social skills group training program designed for autistic children and teenagers to improve their social skills and to work on their personally meaningful social goals. Contact seems to be effective in actually improving their meaningful social goals and in reducing their social anxiety.
That
was great.
That was good.
Wow.
I love it. It's punchy.
Yeah,
Short and
very
concise.
punchy.
I
I
like
like
it.
it. I very much like that. All right, Ed, you've got time for a question.
I've been listening very, very intently. A lot of information was discussed, and I think I'm following. But I guess my question is about the translation of things from the Scandinavian work
Swedish to English.
Yeah, and obviously you talked about, I think I wrote this down, curriculum for social skills in schools. So my understanding of education in Scandinavia is it takes a different approach than we do in Western countries like the United States, Australia, UK. Is there anything that doesn't translate particularly well or is unique to Scandinavian work versus what might translate to Australia?
I think the weather.
Okay.
That's a good one.
It's really cold up there. That's one of the things I struggle with is when I go up there. It's like, oh my goodness, it's so cold. Seriously. I think, what I really enjoy about Scandinavia, people tell me I'm obsessed by it, but that's okay, is that sense of community. So that social, they're very socialist society. They have high taxes, they have free healthcare, free education.
Yeah.
Everything is your basic needs as a citizen of, Sweden are met. And that's right from your healthcare costs right through to your education and university education. So I think that socialist approach to your rights as a citizen is amazing and something that I just love. And I'd really like to see more of that in Australia. I've seen the benefit of, equal opportunity for all and, maternity leave, paternity leave. In Stockholm, you see these really lovely Scandinavian men walking around pushing prams because they get paid paternity leave for 3 months. And that creates that equality and that sort of equal opportunity right through the society. There's many examples of that. So I think that's one of the standout differences for me when I'm up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So I've been getting in a second question these days, so I'm going to go with the second question.
Don't know about this, Ed.
Obviously,
Take over.
if that element of social equality awareness is so prevalent in Scandinavia, when you're talking about working with families and children, is it something about maybe educating them a little bit more about that kind of brings some of this therapy to life?
Yeah, I do. I think the importance of community and society and building those community links, I think that's probably, maybe that's why we focus on coding clubs and creating these supportive social contexts for autistic teenagers. I think, maybe some of that actually is ultimately that sense of community and that sense of a society that nurtures everyone and gives everyone opportunity. So, I think that probably does actually. You're really, really clever, Ed. It probably does drive a lot of probably what I do even when I don't really think about it, short of going into politics. And let me tell you, I've thought about it. I'd love to see more of that sense of community and sharedness, here. I mean, Australia's a great country. We do some really great things. There's always room for improvement on many fronts, but, that's something that's very much inspired me.
You've got my vote.
Oh, same. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Sonya, I can't begin to express how grateful we are for some of your time today. It was very enriching, so much food for thought. It's absolutely amazing. And for all of our listeners, remember you can get access to the link to the abstract and to the paper itself on our researchworks.net and find out a little bit more about Sonya as well. And remember, if you have any questions, you're very, very free to email us too. And there's a CPD form that you can fill out if you want to keep a record for your PD. But for now, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Varsågod.
I love it.
And hej då.
Thank you, Sonya. It was such a privilege to talk to you today.